Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jodielynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Jodielynn, it's not a word we talk about a lot, but we kind of talk about it indirectly, but we don't really mention the word motivation very much, do we? And yet that's kind of at the core of a lot of what we talk about on the show. Because what's driving you, that's what's behind the blocks and the resistances, but it's also behind what's making you tick, what's where your love is, where your passion is in life. So it fits on both sides of that. How did we manage to avoid talking about motivation all this time?
I don't know. Maybe people just have a negative connection to motivation. Like when I think of motivation, I think of waking up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym, and all motivation is lost.
Good point. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to learn a lot more about it because we have an expert on the show joining us to talk about it. Her name is Marcy Axelrod, and she is the author of the book, How We Choose to Show Up. And she has shown up to talk about this very intriguing topic today. So Marcy, thank you for joining us. How you doing?
Terrific. Yes, Walt and Jodielynn, thank you so much for having me.
So, all right, motivation. What motivated you to start thinking about motivation?
So what I would love to do is use the phrase showing up, if it's okay with you. I'm certainly known as a motivational speaker and an innovation speaker, and a lot of people do affiliate me with motivation. The 20 years of research that was really on how people show up and what leads people to succeed or not to succeed. It definitely ties in with leading a good life and being happy.
It certainly does. It can also tie into having a miserable life and being unhappy. It works both directions. That's the thing. Motivation is one of those things that has like two different poles to it.
It does. So since we just spoke a bit about what motivation means and how to, perhaps how people relate to it, I'd love to hear from both of you about what the phrase showing up means to you.
Showing up. You want to go for that one first, Jodielynn?
Sure. Yeah. See, a totally different relationship with that set of words. But showing up is more about who you are and who you're choosing to, like what foot you're choosing to step forward to show the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have to admit, I'm kind of sitting here saying, well, what does showing up mean to me? What is when I show up, what is that? I'm not sure what that means to me. I think the closest I can come to an answer is, well, here I am. I don't really have a clear concept. It's not like I have a strong emotion. We were talking about emotional attachments before we got going on the show. I don't have a strong emotional attachment to show up. I know other people do. I just don't.
Yeah, right. So it's a vague term, and yet it's used all the time. And everyone thinks that what they think it means is what the other person who they're speaking with understands it to mean. Right? So across 20 years, I've heard everything from, showing up is just walking into a room, or the opposite side, showing up is absolutely doing your best, which is what I would call more of a truly showing up. And then there's the authenticity, Jodielynn, that aspect of, bringing yourself, maybe your full self. Other people say it's presence. Bottom line is that this evokes that famous statistics from the University of Texas that just came out that basically says that 75% of the time when you're speaking to someone, what you think you're saying and what they think you're saying are different things.
Yeah. We didn't need a study for that one. We've known that one for generations.
Well, let me dive down into that for just a second. You might think, well, the people closest to me, like that doesn't really apply. So the statistics are that with a stranger, it's 75% likelihood that they misunderstand. With the people you're with more often, you get to about 65% misunderstanding. With the people you're with the most, your spouse, the people in your home, things improve to about a 50% likelihood that they're going to walk away knowing what you were truly talking about. So, the first thing we should do is actually create a baseline what is showing up, because it's not what people think.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly is. What you're saying is true for me. I mean, I've felt that way for the longest time. I think one of the biggest challenges in life is communication. And I've said that many times over the years. And the reason is that as much as we like to think we're good at it, we're really not. Much of the time, we're really rather poor at communication. And those of us who give attention to it, we begin to realize after a while, my God, this is one of the hardest things to do, is to effectively receive and give communication, because of, like you're saying, all the different ways we can misunderstand or misreceive or mistransmit whatever it is that we're trying to communicate. It's and not just verbally either. I mean, even through the body languages and so forth, because we are all readers of body language, right? We all do that. But do we actually pick up what is being transmitted, or do we pick up what it is we think is being transmitted? How much of that is inference on our part, and how much of it is actually, well, here's the message? The more I looked at that over the years, the more I realized, my God, it's amazing I understand anybody.
That's exactly right. Dr. Dan Siegel, who created a field called interpersonal neurobiology, talks about how...
See, I'm lost already.
Okay. So there's this concept where we are separate selves, but we're also interlinked, right? And there's this concept called MWE, M-W-E, and he consulted at a school in Manhattan, and there were second graders going up to their parents and speaking about their friend and saying, we would like to have a play date, meaning both of us, and me and him or her, we want to have a play date. So you're unified from the start, and in that way you don't have this social challenge of what does that person really think, like what the typical anxiety that many teens feel when you think in the world of we. So we're both separate but interlinked. All of that goes away, and that leads us to communicate in a much clearer way.
I'm curious to know more about this theory, because there's a great big skeptical piece of me that's saying, does it really go away?
You mean the social anxiety?
Well, not only the social anxiety, but also the lack of communication or the inadequate communication.
It's the best advice I have on that is ask a question. What did you hear when I said this? What does this mean to you? Mm-hmm. Something else that I'll share. There was a study done in Japan that's now been repeated at Stanford, at Harvard, and at Cornell, where 96 pairs of people were put in MRI scanners. Doesn't that look fun or sound fun? They looked at each other, and what happened by simply looking at each other is the MRIs showed that their brain waves started to do this. Their brain waves started to resonate as a single wave. And that was actually called it's something like inter-individual neural synchronization. And so the point is, when you look into someone's eyes, even if it's a stranger, you actually become one mind, and it's in this shared space between us, even over Zoom. Mm-hmm. Even over Zoom. So the point is, communication can be far more clear and far more felt between people and among people than we really give credit for. And the way to do it is simply be right here, be calm. And if you're not sure what someone is thinking about what you said, just ask. So, Walt, what did you hear just now when I was sharing that?
Yeah, well, I think what I heard was that you were advocating many of the things I try to do when I'm doing the podcast, for example. Mm-hmm. I'm spending a lot of time not just listening to guests and co-hosts on the show, but also kind of taking the perspective of their own perspective and ask myself, what is it that it sounds like they're thinking at this time? What is it that sounds like they're feeling? What is it that what's the message behind the message? Can I pick that up? And if I can't pick that up, that's where the questions come in.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I speak to a lot of groups about leadership. I'm speaking at a national conference on Saturday. It's a large group of professors and engineers and scientists. And the main thing that people misunderstand about that is that when people feel felt, they will work extra for you. They will truly show up for you. They will give their best for you. If they don't feel that you care because you're functioning at the level of the discussion that's only the words and it's not what's beneath the words, it's a transactional experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like you're like it to it instead of person to person, or as I like to say, human to human. And it really makes a difference to be human to human and talk about what you're saying, which is what's, you use the word behind, I use the word under, what's behind the conversation or what's underneath.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a concept from the 1980s from the field of psychology, but also from popular psychology, popular self-help, and so forth. It was a concept called active listening.
Right.
And active listening has elements of this. It also misses elements of this because the basic idea of active listening is you mirror back to the person what you're hearing. The problem with active listening is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you actually feel what's going on or that you're connected to them. You're basically behaving like a computer is spitting it back to them. And on the surface, after, at first they feel like, wow, I'm really being heard. I feel like I'm actually being understood by this person. But if you do it long enough, it actually turns into, do they really hear me? I mean, they're saying all the right things, but somehow it's not quite connecting. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So all of this fits really, really well as a prelude to what showing up truly is. So I'm going to dive into that if it's okay with you.
Sure, go for it. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So the bottom line is that levels of quality exist everywhere. They exist in nature. They exist in our behavior. We all know that. So essentially, I put 3 levels on showing up as a starting point. Level 1 is barely there. So you're burned out, you're checked out, you just don't care. You can also be ill. There are a lot of reasons to be there. And then there's what 80% of us do 80% of the time based on my research. And that's what I call just showing up. So this is kind of, check my look, check the weather, just head on out, go from thing to thing to thing. That's just showing up. I'm going to come back to what it really is and why it's dangerous in a minute. Level 3 is what I call truly showing up. And I use truly because when we are grounded in who we are, when we're ready for the moment, for the people, for the experience, right? And when we feel a sense of care and connectedness, we are truly showing up. So there are 3 skills related to it. And that's because we're in 3 roles at all times. Right? We're individual selves, right? But what else is going on? We're within We're within a situation. So we're a member of a situation. That's our second role. But we're also a member. What's going on outside? We're a member of society. Call it a family, call it a school system, call it a country, call it a global world. We're a member of something beyond ourselves, right? A religion. So we need to recognize that we're in those 3 roles. And when we do, that's when we naturally show up, grounded in ourselves, ready for our situations and connected, or what I call actually all-intelligent in our societal role.
When you're describing that and doing it in the context of right now, you're in a public place as you're connecting to the show. So it's almost like we're in a restaurant, the 3 of us sitting around a table, and there's all that background conversation going on, and we're focusing in on each other as we're doing our talking, right? Trying to kind of filter that out, and in the process of filtering that out, that's where we're supposed to be doing what you're talking about, playing these 3 roles. But we get distracted. There are a lot of distractions. That's what strikes me about this conversation right now, because just because of where you are, we've got the little distractions going on back there. Those distractions happen all the time, not just on a podcast like this. They happen all the time. They're just part of life. Mm-hmm. And it's no wonder. It's enough to have to deal with 3 roles. But, when you have the distractions going on, even remembering that there are 3 roles is a big deal, and then trying to focus on at least one of them, maybe 2. I mean, this is not a small deal. This is a big deal that we have to deal with.
So let me make it really simple, because it's happening at every moment. Even when you're sitting at home reading a book, you are in your 3 roles. The distractions are exactly why 80% of us just show up 80% of the time, right?
Mhm.
Like for all the people who meditate out there, this is like returning to the breath, right? Thinking
Yeah, right.
once again, how am I showing up right now? How am I choosing to show up now? Because we might show up grounded in ourselves, ready for the moment, and feeling a sense of care and connectedness with the people. But then something comes to mind, or then we're hungry, or then we're tired, or that stress about, my child who needs help in some meaningful way comes up, and all of a sudden we're gone. So the exercise is very much waking up to the fact that we are showing up at every moment, whether we want to or not, right? And when we don't show up the way that we want, it doesn't return as a redo. It returns as a what now, right? So there are a few things that can very much help us to focus on the fact that I'm showing up right now. How am I doing it? And I'd be happy to get into that. I'd also love to talk a little more about what's going on in the brain when we're just showing up versus truly showing up.
Well, let me go to Jodielynn first, because she always has some really interesting takes on these conversations. What are you resonating and not resonating with right now? What's connecting and what's not connecting?
I like the explanation of the multiple different aspects. I was going to call it personalities. That's not quite right. The multiple different aspects. And what boggles my mind, or the first thing that I thought of when you said that, was just there's always so much more going on in a conversation than what meets the surface. And I thought of, okay, there's, what's going on around you. You're at a cafe, or, I'm in my house and Walt's in his house. Walt's got a cat and I've got a dog, and, whatever, I can hear her down there. Sometimes she barks under my desk because she wants a treat. So there's that going on. There's also the societal. So I can identify with all of those. And I think about, even more, is there even more? What about the part of you that's stuck in the past of like your past programming? What about the part of you that is a part of the oneness, the all, that we're all a part of? Like, this conversation it feels like it could go even further in showing up with that. I don't know, that's where my brain went.
That's exactly right. So we're always in those 3 roles. When we don't think about them, they're still going on, right? So I cast an economic vote to buy this. It happens to be ginger lemon tea, right? So now there's a whole supply chain across the world that I'm pulling through for more lemons and more ginger and more sugar, whatever's in this. And there's even more reason to employ the people who work at the cafe, because now a customer has come in. Right. So even if we don't think about it, the reality is we are always telling the world what we want and what matters to us. That's our societal role. And the word that I trademarked, intelligence, is because intelligence makes no sense, right? All the skills and knowledge that we need to succeed, it's not inside of us, right? In our skin, within our skull. No. But it's not outside of us either. So it's not an out-intelligence or an ex-intelligence either, right? It isn't in the media and the books and the movies. It's actually in the universe. It's in how we relate. It's in the interrelatedness among everything. So that's why I felt a word was needed to talk about the skill of kind of being in this world. Because we are so much more like leaves on a tree together than we are, supposedly separate people who don't impact each other and don't impact the world.
Okay, so let's tie this back to the concept we were talking about a moment ago, which was communication. how does that connect back? I mean, yes, what you're describing is in my view anyway, it's a really nice metaphorical way of looking at how we're all connected together.
Sure.
Because we are all connected together. But that even that phrase alone can have different meaning for different people. So how does communication fit into this?
So to me, the core is care. Communication happens when I'm feeling you and you're feeling me. And when we're doing that, often our nervous system is calm and we're in the right hemisphere of our brain, which is the only one that reads the language of the body. It's the one that hears the music and actually starts to move to it. It's the one that understands metaphor and poetry. And it's the one that when you feel the ray of sun, recognizes how crucial that is for our existence and feels joy from it. So the communication that occurs when we're in that mode, Walt, of care, like I deeply am curious about you as a human being, and Jodielynn, you as well. And it's going to lead me to kind of lean toward you and have an open heart toward you and feel a sense of love and joy toward you as kind of the mostly strangers that we all are. That is the connected, that's the relationship with communication. I mean, com means with. So in essence, there's a withness when we use words. I want to mention one other quick thing, which is that just showing up in the middle of the continuum there, barely just and truly showing up, we're often in the left hemisphere of our brain, which is very much grab, get it done, right? I mean, we have two hemispheres, right? And all mammals do. And when you ask yourself, well, like, why? And it's right, like, why is there a strip down the middle and it's separate? So it's because when we were evolving out in nature, there were two things we needed to do, and they needed us to attend to the world in a different way. The first thing we needed to do is be able to feed ourselves. And the next thing is to not be dinner for someone else. So feed and stay alive, right? So this left side, we're getting stuff done, we're moving fast, we're distracted, this and then this and then this and then this. We don't necessarily feel each other's care. And we also know that we're always right about things. There's a closedness because that blueberry on the bush, it's a blueberry and it's safe to eat. And I know it, like, there's no time, like, to step back and say, is that the one with the little dots that, people and it's dangerous? I don't really know. Like, how does that help us? We need to know. And it turns out when the right hemisphere is offline, let's say someone has a stroke, God forbid, and you only have that left hemisphere, if the whole right side of the body is paralyzed and can't move, and a doctor says, whose arm is that? A patient without access to the right hemisphere, which is the one that feels care and that communicates effectively, that patient will say, that's my mother's arm. That's your arm, doctor, or it's the arm of the patient over there. This is the work of Dr. Ian McGilchrist. He's a psychiatrist who has written a number of tomes about this. The Matter with Things and Master and His Emissary. And he talks at length about how our world is now dominated by this left hemisphere, which is grab it and get it done. The unfortunate thing is it's totally opinionated. It could care what you think. It doesn't seek new data. It knows it's right. Think data, math, AI, code. This is the world that we're in. And that's why mental health is in such a dire strait as it is. And that's why we have wars on the planet.
I'm reminded of another doctor whose name I can't remember. He's associated with I believe, UCLA. And he had a really interesting study he did with mental patients who had various brain injuries, kind of along the line of what you're talking about, but a little bit different in that the patients he worked with had injuries to the parts of the brain that enabled them to connect to that right side. So not so much a stroke, but more like a disconnect, if you will.
Yep.
And One of the most interesting things that he did to illustrate the challenge that's involved for somebody like that also provides a way to understand how important that right side is from an emotional perspective. And it just feeds in directly to what you're saying. He illustrated it through an experience that he would often repeat with one particular patient of his who he really liked a lot. They'd go out to lunch together. And he would say to the patient, okay, so let's go have lunch together. And the patient would say, sure, that sounds great. Where would you like to go? And the patient would say, well, we could go to place A, which is just down the street. It's real close, but there are always long lines there. That could just take forever. There is place B. Now, that place B has a lot of good reviews. People really seem to like that one, but it's a long way across town. Now, there's also place C, and he'll just go through the litany here, but he'll never actually be able to make a choice. Why can't he make a choice? Because he can't connect into the right brain, so he has no emotional connection. It turns out we need the emotion in order to choose something. And that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about that. Without the emotion, without that right brain, that large picture piece of ourselves, we literally can't make a choice.
Right. We basically become a robot, which is why AI will never replace human beings until it has, blood running through its little circuit.
Well, don't rule out the possibility that it could actually attain a right brain perspective. I mean, that's possible with AI, but I get what you're saying.
But it won't get the visceral lived experience that puts us in contact with the world is basically care. That's the word that we use. We have to care. And a microchip's not going to care, and code is not going to care. Right. So anyway, we can put that aside. I don't really want our time to be focused on that. I mean, the bottom line is that what is the connective tissue that leads us to be the parent who we want to be, the person we want to be, the leader we want to be, the one that's going to help us to grow our business, right? To have customers that we retain, is showing that we care and being in the right body state such that we can feel others and they can feel us. Because then we naturally tune in to their truth. We're more likely to ask, like when we notice that micro expression that kind of comes and goes in a flash, we're more likely to ask about it. Are you feeling this? I noticed this. Like, what else is going on? What else can you tell me about that? Some of my research, it goes back 20 years to 1999. There's a question that I ask in my surveys. What portion of people think about how they want someone to feel in their presence? What's your guess about the percentage of people who say that they think about that?
Repeat again. I want to make sure what you're saying exactly. Just repeat it for me.
In a survey, I ask people, yes or no, do you think about how you want others to feel in your presence?
I really have no idea what the answer is. What do you think, Jodielynn?
I think it depends on the group that's surveyed. I don't know. That's something that a lot.
Across America. It was just all zip codes and education levels and across America.
Across America. I would say the majority probably said, no, I don't think about that.
So 73% of people never think about it. 27% of people said, yes, I regularly think about it. So if you don't care how others feel in your presence, it's quite possible that the way you leave them feeling is not what you would choose should you give it some thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if we're really stuck in that left brain of just do, it sounds like the transactional state of mind. Like, I just got to get this done. I got to get this new client, blah, 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 like that whole rigmarole there. And perhaps it never occurred to them how that makes somebody feel, or they've never even thought about it. But that's definitely a question in personal development circles that I've been asked of, how do you think you make people feel? And how do you want to make them feel? I think that's interesting.
I'm sitting here and I'm asking myself that question again, even with that information that you gave us. I still don't have a clear idea of what do I want to make people feel. You know what? I don't actually want to make people feel anything. I just want to find out what they're choosing to feel.
I have an answer.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. When I sit across the table from somebody, I truly want them to feel like I care. Like I'm listening, I'm interested, I care, and I always want to lift them up so they feel better about themselves, better about a situation, whatever it may be, lighter than when they walked through my door.
That's excellent. That's wonderful. Right. And that will lead them to want to spend time with you. They will feel uplifted. Yeah. And, it's really important. This is really important because we impact people so much more than we realize. Dr. Nicholas Christakis up at Yale is the one who has these amazing statistics about how our behaviors and our thoughts move through society. He showed that the people who we spend the most time with are actually 45% more likely to do what we do than if they hadn't spent time with us. 45%. So do you show care, right? Are you distracted? Are you looking away? Are you pacing? Are you eating? What are you doing, right? Are you rude? But it doesn't stop there. So that person then goes, and so Jody, you go and spend time with your partner, your child, friend. Yeah. So let's say your partner. So your partner is now 25% more likely to do what, let's say, I did right now because you're with me. So it goes from you into him or her. From there, that person's best friend is 10% more likely to do what I'm doing. So it goes all the way through. And it's not just 3 people. It turns out we each have a circle of about 20. It's our family. It's the people we work with. It's our friends. 20 people. So there's the first set of 20 around us, but they each have 20, and then they each have 20. So we're up to 8,000 people who we are impacting, not just with what we do. Let's face it, our behaviors, they have thoughts behind them. They have emotions behind them. So it's not just what we do, it's what we feel and what we think. And it is going right through 8,000 people every day of our lives.
Wow.
We talk impact. So now the question is, don't you think we should all be asking ourselves, how am I choosing to show up? What do I want people to feel in my presence? Right? How ready am I for this situation where I'm about to create a lived experience? Right?
For 8,000 people.
Yeah.
How is that similar or different to asking myself, what is it that I want to feel? What is it that I want to think? What is it that I want to give my attention to?
You could do that. Your mirror is very right back at you. You know what I'm saying? What showing up does is it takes the self-focused mirror of our self-role and it goes like that. And it focuses us more on the situation, which has others, and on the impact that goes way out there into society.
But it's like a chicken or an egg, because I don't know if you're thinking this, Walt. Because
I am. You're on the same wavelength I am. Yeah.
Because how we're choosing to think or feel, or what we perceive is going to happen in a situation is mirrored back to us through all of these other people. So which is first? I don't know if I described it well, Walt, but
you described it beautifully. That's exactly what that's what was stopping me. It's not one directional.
No, it is reverberative. Absolutely. Yeah. So my definition of what a situation is, it is a reverberative process that goes back and forth. You're impacting me and I'm impacting you. And when I see you looking happy and totally with it and doing this, it's impacting me one way. And when I look at you, be like, what is she talking about? It's impacting me another way, right? Right? So it's very much like that. There's this co-creation process. We're creating everyone around us and they us at every moment, which is once again why it's so important to ask ourselves, do I want to uplift that person? Do I want to show care? Do I want to really learn about them? Or am I just going to shut down, treat them like an object, and just get stuff done? We're in a meeting, it's 3:00, we're all here. Okay, let's go. Are you with me? Okay, what is the agenda? What does this client need? What does that client need? And so sometimes that's okay. I'm not saying just showing up isn't okay. It's definitely okay, because we're moving along that continuum constantly. There's no way to truly show up more than 30% of the time. Let's say it's exhausting. You have to think. You kind of have to be calm. You have to be here, right?
Right.
So there's a flow where we might start just showing up, and then it's lunchtime and we're tired and need a break and hungry. Then we're just showing up, and then maybe we need to take a walk around the block, and then we truly show up again, and we're just doing this. So it's very much this dance. Society is impacting us. You read the headline about war and devastation. How can you truly show up to that? Like it just shuts us off. How can we do this? We aren't. We used to live in tribes, right? And tribes were up to 125 people. After they were over 125, they broke off. Why? Because there was no way to effectively care for all those people and communicate across them all. So our system of care evolved when, if we knew that someone was hurt, we were right there to help them, and we helped them. Our system of care did not evolve to read in the paper or see on our phones that there's devastation across the globe. And unless we stop our lives, like, what are we really going to do? And it kills us, and we're sick and ill because of it. We can't stand it, like kind of just reading it and moving on with our day. We hate that. Although people don't say it that overtly. None of us like that. It makes us feel awful. So, and we carry that stress with us, right? Of course. So we aren't designed to live in the society that we're living in.
So it's stunted us.
I'm sorry?
It's stunted us.
Very much so, which is why we're so into designing things that are, quote, efficient and non-human. Right. It's why we have this poly crisis, and we're moving toward a self-terminating society. Not that we need to talk about that. We can if you want to, but I'd rather be uplifting. It's how I choose to show up, is like, look, let's do what we can.
Part of this is also about identifying what it is we don't want. I mean, it's a basic LOA concept. Before you can know what you want, you have to know what you don't want, so that you know what you want. You kind of have to go through a process there.
Yeah. So the law of attraction is very much supported by visualizing what it is that we want to bring toward us. And showing up does exactly that. The concept of readiness for our situations, right? That's the skill of our situational role. What I recommend is I say, look, sit there in a calm state. Visualize what you expect to have happen and what you want to have happen. And in doing that, you are bringing to life in your body a preparedness to see and hear and feel what it is that you're looking for. What also happens is you become more perceptive to when something deviates from what it is that you either anticipated or want to have happen. So you notice more, you're more present to it, with it, and for it, such that you can respond differently. You're actually more capable of bringing toward you what you want after you ready yourself in this way.
Jodielynn, you know that I'm not usually one who's lost for the next question. I'm feeling lost for the next question today.
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go. You spoke earlier, Marcy, about we could go kind of two different ways, like how the brain acts, I think was one of them, and I can't remember the other one. But why don't we choose one of those ways?
Sure.
Like choose your own adventure.
Sure. Yeah, you were mentioning motivation and showing up. Showing up to me is extremely motivational. And that's what I'm told is, my God, Marcy, I've never been so inspired to choose how I'm showing up ever before, because now I know my impact and I know I'm in 3 roles. And like, once it's settled, it's like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. And it's simple. All it is a framework around what's always been going on. It has always been going on. So we can take that mode, which is kind of, it simplifies everything, right? Who wants to think about 3 roles and 3 skills in a continuum? When you look around now and you see someone or something, you can notice that it's showing up. And how is it showing up? Is it showing up well? Is it truly showing up, or is that person kind of someone who just always kind of walks in and doesn't really seem to be engaged or ready, or calm? Right? Have you ever noticed that, like, you can kind of look around a room at any point and, okay, that person's just like, and just place people on the continuum.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you probably know how well they're going to sleep that night.
It's not hard to infer. That's true. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes when people are oblivious, they sleep like babies.
Yeah. I look at it in terms of how are they responding? How are they reacting? What are they showing me in their because there's our emotions do connect to our actions. We often like to try to deceive people, but nevertheless, the emotions do tend to connect to the actions, and that I think is where we get a lot of our inference when we're reading body language. We're recognizing that thing that they're doing over there that has a certain feeling to it. And so that's how I can connect to that. I can sense that feeling. That's something we do fairly regularly, fairly easily, and pretty much without a lot of thought. It's almost like it's just built in. We're used to it. It's a habit. It's kind of like driving and not being aware of where you're driving to, but you're just so used to it, you just drive there because you don't have to think about it anymore. It's all a very habitual subconscious routine that you're doing. Well, the same thing can be true for reading somebody's emotions off of their body language. The challenge that can come up is when there is a disconnect that goes on between what's going on in their emotions and what's going on in their body language. That's where the communications start to fall apart, in my experience anyway. So
sorry, go ahead.
What's that? No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the reason why that's so important is because there's a part of you that recognizes that there's what they're saying, what they're doing, and what I'm feeling, they don't jive, which is like the alarm system within our body of like, you can't trust them. Right. So I think that's important.
Very essential, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in those situations, people are dishonoring their own true north. They're dishonoring what they know inside is true. Mm-hmm. And it may be to protect themselves. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're intentionally harming anybody. It can be that they experienced something negative from this in the past, and they need to just back up and show up a certain way, even though it's not their true self, right? They need to seem like they don't care about that, C grade that they just got on the math test. It's okay. It'll be fine. Deep down, they feel like crap about it, but something taught them that they can't walk in and say, I'm sad and I'm frustrated. I worked really hard and I didn't do as well as I wanted. Right.
Yeah. One of the great ironies of life is that we as we're interacting not only with each other, but also within ourselves, we are often doing it in a way that prevents, perhaps, that's not even where I want to go. It discourages us. Let's put it that way. It discourages us from actually trusting what it is that we're hearing and what we're seeing and what we're experiencing and what we're believing, because we're doing it within ourselves. And then the amazing part is nobody else is really caring about that. We're the only ones who really care about it. It's all. My point is, it's all happening within us. It's not happening within the other people that are in the room. It's happening within us, and we're filtering everything through that experience.
So why don't you think other people are perceiving this as well?
Perceiving which? What's? Give me a noun to go with this.
The inauthenticity of someone else's behavior.
Well, I think they do sense it. They don't necessarily know what to do with it, but they sense it.
So wouldn't it be beautiful if we paused the superficial topic of whatever's going on and say, I'm feeling maybe you're upset about this, or do you mind sharing with me, what might be underneath this? And we have to do it in a safe way. The thing is, if someone doesn't feel safe, forget about it. And that's the problem, is that we are living in a world where our nervous systems aren't running on safe anymore. Our nervous systems are running on alert. We're going zzz, we're buzzing along. This is what's underneath just showing up. I have a whole chapter on it. And I talk about what's really going on. And it leaves us to be closed. All of that abundance and that joy that we're looking for, it is so far gone. It's like well over a wall. And we have this wall up and we're just getting stuff done. And we can't, once again, this is our left hemisphere. We're not connecting with others. I mean, really what it would take is one person truly showing up, noticing it, this intuitive reality that we feel, right? Because emotions underlie everything. Emotions underlie reason. Emotions underlie logic. Don't think for a moment that something rational is different than something emotional. Emotions are primary within the human body, within our species, right? So is relationality. Relationships among things are primary before anything else, before thought, before words. Anyway, so if one person just pauses and kind of approaches things in a different way, right? Notice like the moment I stopped, you're feeling something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My tone, my body language. And if you do that, the other person might be able to relax too, let their guard down, connect with you. And then the moment they feel connected, they can be more real. I don't know if they can be completely real, right? Depends how much baggage there is that taught them that they can't be real.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about, from my perspective anyway, is what I do when I'm taking a genuine interest in somebody. I think that's what you were talking about earlier when you called it caring. For me, that's just, I really want to know about what's going on with you right now. And just that action, that set of statements and actions and emotions that are all tied together that convey, I am here to understand, hear, feel whatever it is that you're going through right now. It's an invitation, but it's also an opening that says, I connect to you. I resonate with you. I'm getting what's going on from you. Tell me what's going on.
Right. Love this. Human to human.
Yeah.
Human to human. In my TED Talks, I stepped off the red dot. It was a huge risk. I didn't know if the camera was going to totally lose me. I stepped off the red dot and I went right up to the audience. I don't know, it was like 1,000 people. It was a big theater. And I took off the mic and I just said, human to human. I hope you accept my invitation tonight, right? To ask yourself, how am I choosing to show up? And it was one of these unexpected things, but they were so with me beforehand that being up on a stage presenting, it felt so wrong. It felt like I just, we're all one. So like one's up and they're down, and the hierarchy and the division. And it turns out, there was a line of people after that crying, waiting to speak with me, like saying, I've never felt this. And you're right. And I'm going to change my relationship with my daughter, my partner, my boss, this is what it's all about. It sounds like you understand it.
Yeah. And that kind of resonance is going to go a long way, because that's basically the response of somebody who feels like they've been touched by it. They've been touched by the experience in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was one man in particular. I don't know his name because this is years ago now. And he rolled up his sleeve. They showed me this massive tattoo of someone's face. And he said, this is my twin brother. He was killed 27 years ago in somewhere. And he's always been with me. And I've never had the words to describe, who he is to me. Mm-hmm. And he said, you gave me those words. He said, he truly showed up for me. And oh my God, I'm about to cry. I mean, it was just, that's what it is. It's care, but beyond care, like when you really show up, there's a, on the continuum, what I talk about is noticing comes first, and then tuning in. And then feeling felt. And once you feel felt, this is the holy grail, you take action. So that's the progression of going from being barely there to truly showing up, which is where you start to notice, or I'm sorry, to just showing up. You start to notice, but maybe you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. And then once you notice, you kind of can choose to tune in, and then others feel felt, and then you take action. And that is how we can have a more peaceful world. And that is how we can try to reduce this mental health crisis and these teens killing themselves and these on and on.
So if I can kind of take what you're saying here and mirror it back at you the old 80s way, it sounds like what you're talking about here is a method for social change. And the question that comes to my mind is, to what degree is the goal social change, and to what degree is the goal internal self-improvement? And where's the overlap?
Oh my God, exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Because humans are the ones who make the laws and the policies and the processes and the structure of government and education and everything. So you start with yourself. And you notice that your self mirrors like this most of the time. And what we're trying to do is recognize there's a situation. It's going back and forth. They're impacting me. I'm impacting them. There's a lot of impact. I need to think about how I'm showing up. I mean, it's really that simple.
Very interesting. Jodielynn, what's going through your head right now? I'm curious.
Well, I think that this is the way, like you were saying, Marcy, that everything changes. I mean, if we're impacting 8,000 people with every word, thought, emotion, like how we show up every moment, I don't even know how to quantify it. That's a lot of people that we're potentially impacting. And it reminds me of, that old adage of like, when you're walking down the street, like smile at people. It's why that is so impactful. It's that noticing, that's being a part of that second part, that social conversation that you're in, whether you know it or not, and how that ripple effect truly changes everything.
Yep, that's exactly right. So if it's all right, I want to share with both of you, two things that actually prompt us to remember we're showing up and to ask, how am I choosing to do this now? One way gets us into our bodies. Okay, so take your hand like this and take two fingers like this. I want you to draw a 3 for level 3, right? Truly showing up is level 3. Draw it on your palm. Go up and down until your palm feels your 3, because it's in there and it's always going to be there for you. And what you're doing is you're changing your mind from focused attention on something else, from wandering into sensing, because the mind is only doing one of those 3 things at any time. It's directing its attention on something, it's wandering, or it's sensing. And sensing can be, oh God, there's a tag that bothers me, or I'm hot, or I'm hungry, or what, I'm scared. But sensing brings you into your body. So the moment you do this, it resets our nervous systems. It brings us down. It's like a big pause reset, and you can do it in 20 seconds. And that's when you decide, how am I choosing to show up? The other tip that I would give is, what I'm told is that people put it in as an alarm in their calendars, like every couple of hours. How am I choosing to show up? For some people, they're going to blow it off. For others, that really works, because they'll say, okay, I'm going to pause for 10 seconds. I'm going to consider this. I'm going to breathe, 5 breaths, 10, like small, simple things. It can be a single breath. Okay. If you want to start really small. Because the moment you reset, you're switching from one attention system into another. You're feeling more expansive. And here's the key. that coveted dual awareness that only humans can do. No other mammal has the ability to both be in the moment and kind of have perspective, right? To go up and look down. How am I showing up in this moment? Humans are the only ones that can do that. And it's this coveted dual awareness that, meditators and people in the contemplative fields talk about. Asking yourself the question, how am I choosing to show up, does that. The how inherently has an exhale. It pauses us, it slows us down, and then choosing. How am I choosing? Like, wow, all of a sudden, whoosh, we've got all these options. There's a lot more going on for us to consider. So if you can ask yourself that question, how am I choosing to show up? It can really help you to show up more the way that you choose. So those are two options. Ask the question, maybe prompt yourself with an invite on your calendar, and trace your 3.
Okay. Well, this has been an interesting exploration because you really showed up to show us about showing up. That really helps a lot. But I also want to ask you a couple of questions before we part company. First question, you have the book. Is the book out? I wasn't really clear about that. Is the book out now? Is it out and about, or is it still in publishing stage? Or where is it at right now?
Yeah, the publisher's holding it up to do big launch stuff. So what I would say, go to my website, choose to show up, and there's a, talk to Marcy button. I can send digital copies out to people. Part 1 of the book is downloadable for free on the website, but I would much, that's an earlier version. I would much prefer that you reach out to me and say, hey, Marcy, can I have the book? I'm not on the planet to sell books. I'm on the planet to help people choose how we show up. So I'd be happy to just give it.
So you basically just answered the second question before I asked it, which is well done. But the second question was, how do people reach you? You just described that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, choose2showup.com.
We'll make sure we'll include that in the show notes too to make it
easy
for people to find it.
Thank you. I'd love to hear from people. I'd also like to give you some diagrams so that people can see what the continuum looks like. And I mean, and there's a peace symbol of self-grounding, situational readiness, and societal connectedness. I mean, it's the moment you see it, it'll stick in your brain.
Okay. Jodielynn, I always ask you to give me the one summary point, which is the one thing that's jumping out to you. What's jumping out to you tonight? What's this afternoon? What's the thing that's saying this is what brings the whole conversation together for me today?
Just one? I have to pick just one?
Well, you can pick more than one if you like. I was trying to make it easy, but you can do it whichever way you like.
I think this conversation is a reminder to take that breath, to stop and be in this moment. And from this moment, not only can we change how we're showing up in the world, but we can impact how everyone else is showing up in the world just by taking that breath and noticing and choosing to show up. So thank you for that reminder, Marcy.
See, Marcy, that's why I have Jodielynn do the summary, because she always just pulls it right together. It's like a nice with a little bow on top. It's a perfect way of just expressing what we've been talking about for the last 60 minutes. I love that.
Thank you.
One other thing that I make it a habit to do here on the show, and I want to do it with you too, because everyone who comes onto the show is essentially a giver at heart. We get involved in doing a podcast like this. You get involved with doing your book. You're reaching out to the world and so forth because you're trying to give back. You're trying to help other people based on stuff that you learned in your life that has helped you, which is a wonderful thing. And a lot of the time we're creating content that gets consumed by people we never even know about. We never see them. We never hear them. They pick it up. They learn something from it. They get something. We don't even see what the result is, but it's happening. I mean, you were describing earlier how those reverberations work. They just go on and on and on, but we don't even see it. And I think it's important to give some credit for that. So on behalf of those people that you've never met, that you've never seen, never will meet, never will see, that you have been putting those reverberations out, that you've been helping in all these different ways. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Oh, well, both of you, Jodielynn and Walt, thank you. Jodielynn, and we're all, when you walk out and someone's a stranger, you may actually have touched their life and you don't know it through other people. And just think about that.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So really cool. Thank you once again for joining us, Jodielynn. As usual, my God, your insights were insightful. What a surprise!
Thank you.
No
Walt.
surprise there. That's like continuous from week to week. But really appreciate that, and thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.